but you become really a strategic partner thinking, how can I best support my client looking for ways to do things more efficiently than I am now? So we both win, I guess. So the client can do technically more with me on the long run. So I think they're looking for business savvy agencies that can put themselves in the shoes of the client, look for efficiencies, but also can execute again in very cost-effective ways.
My name's Mike Lander, and you're listening to Higgle, the B2B Sales Club podcast, where we bring you actionable insights about sales RFPs, negotiations, and difficult procurement discussions from sales leaders, brand leaders, and procurement leaders. Please subscribe to get updates when new episodes are released. Bruno, thank you ever so much for joining me on Higgle, the B2B Sales Club podcast.
Good to see you, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Now, I'm really looking forward to this because so this time for people listening, we're going to take quite a big picture view of the marketing agency landscape and also client side, because Bruno happens to be an industry kind of advisor and expert across the industry. So this will be a fascinating podcast for all agencies out there that are thinking, what's going on? Is the market up? Is the market down? What's the big macro trend? This is one definitely for you. So without further ado, Bruno, what's your background? What do you do? And something unusual about yourself.
Thanks, Mike, again for having me on the show. My name is Bruno Gralpois. I'm a co-founder and principal at the agency Mania Solutions. It's a software company headquartered in Seattle that we started about 11 years ago now, and provides software solutions for brands who want to manage their agency relationships more effectively and drive greater value from the partnership. So we have been focused for years now on enabling really organizations and partnerships between client and agencies to be stronger. And so that's our commitment as a company and our focus as a company. My background is, since you asked about my background a little bit, French born and raised. You may have picked that up already, but outside of that, I've been in the US for about 30 years now, and mostly on the client side, working for large organizations, building agency management, organizations focused on, again, enabling these companies to be better partners. And after doing this for a number of years, wrote a book called Agency Mania, which we ended up naming the company after, Agency Mania Solutions. That's really about harnessing the madness of the client-agency relationship for high-impact results. And it became very clear that the book was a good place to start, but companies were looking for more than just best practices, but a way to bring those to life in the organization, operationally speaking. And that's where software was the natural next step to bring these best practices to life for those companies.
Very good. And something unusual about yourself, Bruno.
Well, I'm a very avid content producer. I write on a regular basis on this particular topic, but also published a number of books on different topics. One of which, outside of Agency Mania, has been really on success, called Success Freak. How to kick ass in life in 7 days. And then I had a chance to write another book also on beauty. I was a judge for Miss USA and Miss America, and I wrote a book called Magnifique, Inside and Out. And they're both on Amazon and other places, but just love to explore topics that I find fascinating, like success or beauty, and in addition to business partnerships. And I like to tackle those kind of very nebulous, very complex ideas, but bring them, try to organize them in very digestible manner, which is where the books are in place today.
Very good. So let's get into the questions. So the first one was kind of a big picture topic of what's the state of the union on agency side, kind of macro trends. What will it mean for independent agencies as well as the networks? And again, if you can cover it globally, great. If it's predominantly North America, that's fine. But just give us a view on what you think is going on.
That's a great question. That's obviously a very complicated answer because there are so many facets of how the industry is doing. At a macro level, we're looking at a very healthy, very large industry, $1 trillion industry across the board globally. And if you look at the, kind of the way it's been performing as of late, we're looking at, even for 2024, we're looking at about 7 to 8% growth. That's excluding political ads, which, as you know, in the US, with the election dooming here, is a wonderful catalyst of growth for advertising.
Exactly.
But even outside of that, on a global basis, we're looking at a very healthy growth across the board.
So, Bruno, is that on, just so we're clear and so the audience is clear, is that in terms of ad spend or is that in terms of agency fees?
That's a very good clarifying question. I'm talking advertising spend. Now, there is a natural correlation between the two. When one does well, the other one is likely to perform very well. Although, as you know, compensation models are evolving. That's another part of the way to assess the industry. There's a lot of innovation and appetite for evolving the model. Many of them call the agency model dead. And, it's leading to a lot of new agencies exploring new ways of being compensated for the work they're doing outside of the typical agency fees per se. But overall, it's a very healthy industry. I think I spend a lot of my time looking at the performance of the holding companies, financial performance. And if you look at that on that, as well, you're seeing, organic growth that are, very healthy for most of these holding companies. Couple of them always perform better than the others. That's just the matter of the beast, but that's how it works. But they're doing.
Publicis Group currently are doing really, really well.
Publicis is
we
doing
are now
great.
Where are we? October 24.
Yeah. Accenture Song is doing very well. They're now number 2. We just issued our top agencies of the world, and they are number 2 after WPP now. They've grown quite a bit. But, overall, if you look at their profitability or their organic growth, they're both doing very well, organically speaking. And I think from a profitability perspective, they're all really strong double-digit numbers. You're looking between probably 15, 18%.
So this isn't just fee income growth. It's not just turnover in terms of obviously flow of media spend. It's not just fee income growth, and it's not, but it is actually also profitability.
Profitability,
so that, as indicators of a healthy business.
Yeah,
and about cash flow. But it sounds like they're doing pretty well.
They're doing well, and you want them to be doing well for a couple of reasons. Number one is you can't, when you look at their profitability, you almost have to look at geographically how they're doing within certain region. Some of them, again, it varies. Some regions are always performing better. Maybe some are performing better for that particular holding company. Then you look by discipline. Media, for example, has always been a very strong catalyst of growth and profitability, certainly as of late, or data services and so on, where other categories like creative and others may either stagger or maybe not see as much profitability. So it varies quite a bit. You can't really generally, state that everything is strong. Certain categories are doing better than others. But the reason why it's good for those holding companies to do well is because they've made a number of good decisions along the way. Certainly kicked off during the COVID era, trying to operate more leanly, more efficiently, and making some healthy decisions about how they reduce cost and manage their business more efficiently. But the reason why it's healthy is because it allows them really to put money down and invest into new ways of working or new technology. And certainly AI as you know, has been a source of massive investment from those holding companies. So when they're doing well, they can invest more in talent and technology, and that's good for the industry at whole.
Interesting. So what does that mean for the independent agencies?
It's interesting because there's also a very dynamic, very vibrant sector, if you will. There's been a number of stories coming out as in the past couple of months of I would say small or independent groups doing quite well, and certainly showing up in agency reviews where they are competing with the big guys and sometimes winning business, and that's been good to see. I think there is an appetite for brands to say, there is a different way of doing work. We have a very diverse set of needs, very nuanced businesses, And sometimes we want to bring a diverse set of agency resources to our portfolio. So we want to look for the small indie shops that may be either hyper specialized or may have some very creative geniuses, that we can tap into. So and then they're also very lean and very flexible. And for some companies that are looking for that kind of level of flexibility and agility, it might be a great option for them. So the independents are doing well. They're doing well not only in creative, they're doing well on media as well. Horizon Media, for example, is one of the largest independent media companies, also doing very well and keep showing up in reviews and winning business with major brands. So I think it's a very healthy sector as well. As you know, when independent agencies are doing well, they're quickly a target for acquisition by the big holding companies. That still happens. Some independent agencies don't want to go to that process, and they'll fight to the teeth and stay independent. But many of them eventually get to critical mass, and then they become very attractive to holding companies. So there's a lot of M&A activity still in our industry, which is also healthy.
So let's go into that in a second, because just take the kind of like agencies are doing well. So like you, I know a lot of agencies globally. Typically mine are kind of North America and Europe, particularly UK. Do you think there's that sounds like a loaded question. So if I talk to, I've just come back from a conference, brilliant conference, which was the SODA, Society of Digital Agencies, which was in Copenhagen this year. 120 odd agencies. It was an amazing conference, really, really well run. Kane, Ulla, and Tom Beck do an amazing job of running that members association, members organization. What was very clear was different parts of the world, from an agency perspective, are doing better than others. So the UK seems to be doing less well than other parts of the world. Now, it's quite a micro kind of geographic view of the world, but just interested, are you seeing geographic differences?
Yeah, there are geographic differences. I mean, if I look from an M&A perspective, for example, you're seeing in the European, so the US always been kind of the leading, and anything digitally led capability tend to be remain kind of the primary, I would say, capability and talent that companies are interested in acquiring. But if you look at outside of the US, it tends to be actually the UK and France tend to be really seem to be ground for innovation and a lot of agencies, and so there's still a lot of capabilities and interest there. Obviously, then there's macroeconomic elements or drivers that may impact the performance of certain agencies in certain markets or regions. It's understandable, and I know the UK has gone through a number of challenges in that regard, economically speaking. So maybe that's a contributing factor. Outside of that, I think those markets remain strong because they are where a lot of the advertisers will ultimately. I mean, the UK is still a wonderful hub for Europe, and we'll continue to see, I think, a lot of activity in that sector. But again, it can be very contextual, to your point. Yeah.
Exactly. So if we take kind of, because marketing services, marketing agencies is a very broad landscape and very nuanced landscape. If you look at it by kind of like some broad kind of subcategories of, you've got creative, you've got media production, you've got media buying, you've got digital development, you've got obviously all of the organic and paid. Are you starting to see a difference in terms of, I think M&A is always interesting because it's a lens of what people see as being valuable. So are you seeing a movement towards certain types of subsectors being more attractive than others?
Absolutely. I think there's two that come to mind. I mean, creative and media will remain always very strong categories. There's a lot of work funneling, being channeled through those disciplines clearly. But the one that are really hot right now is data. Data, obviously, because even when with all the talk around AI, a lot of the AI capabilities are enabled through access through data and data, third party data as well as primary data. And as you know, with all the stuff going on in digital and cookies and and a cookieless world, I guess the primary data would become really essential for many brands. So the use of data remains critical, not only because of the content creation, the personalization, push. All these things are supported by data. So data is a very hot commodity, I guess, and that's why you've seen a lot of the holding companies acquired, making massive acquisitions in the data space over the past 5 years, really to build these capabilities and offering them into their offering. And then the other one, I think, is production. Production is very hot. That was actually a conversation recently with friends at Omnicom, and they just launched their Omnicom production. And it's just that, there's all the holding companies are also producing these incredible capabilities so they can produce content at high speed, high volume, at a reasonable price. And so they're all building these capabilities across the board. And that becomes a big focus for brands who want to do more with less and want to, because of the proliferation of channels, need to have a strategy where content can be created cost effectively on a large scale. And so production is hot, no doubt, as of today.
So that's very interesting. I think more for less is definitely a theme of the last 12 months. And I think, there's all sorts of reasons why brands are trying to do that, and enabling technology and economic recession, many, many reasons. So I think more for less is probably a common theme that will go into next year as well. As a production agency, then, if you're a network, it makes perfect sense. You're trying to basically produce, perhaps be the lowest cost producer in your industry at generating production. So Porter's Five Forces. But if you're an independent, what does that mean? If you're a production company as an independent, what's going to happen next?
It's more challenging because you're competing with, again, these holding companies who build these incredible capabilities that are either offshore or nearshore, using technology, and they really have, perfected the art form of creating assets, again, very cost effectively. So for the independents, your option really is leveraging technology, I think. And I think that becomes naturally kind of a place to go, and leveraging technology to, whether it's generative AI for content creation, but also be able to have seen a number of AI applications to create assets, digital assets, for example, for websites and emails and other things using, again, technology. So I think it's gonna, it's always kind of this type of technology is really helping organization kind of recalibrate and find themselves to be far more competitive than they would otherwise be able to. So I'm excited about what's coming down the pipe and what's available to those companies. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think it's going to be a fascinating, what I would say normally is a fascinating 5-year journey. I don't think it'll be that long. I think we're going to see changes in sprints of 12 months, given what's going on in the generative AI industry. So let's see how that plays out, especially with agents as well, and how agents are going to affect the agency world, agentic AI. But anyway, a slightly curveball question, Bruno. So if you were an agency owner now, and you were looking to exit in the next 3 to 5 years, where would you focus your attention to create the most value for your company? Wasn't prepared, so it's a complete curveball question, but it's a natural lead on from what you were saying.
Well, I think, first, in the agency world, I've seen just extremely talented, brilliant business leaders make really well thought out decisions along the way to build their business and grow their business responsibly. But probably one of the things I pay attention to, obviously, what's happening with the 4As on a regular basis, where their center of gravity is and where they tend to pay attention. It's very clear that almost whether you're on the brand side or on the agency side, talent remains one of the most critical, valuable asset a company can build. And so, and it's even more true, I think, in the agency world than any other industry, perhaps. So, talent is probably one of the places where I think a lot of investment will likely need to take place for an organization to build value. The second thing would be really, again, we talked about technology, leveraging or building technology. I think there's a number of incredible resources available in the marketplace today that agencies can tap into and license, for example. But there's also a lot of appetite for agencies to start creating their own kind of tools and capabilities, build their own IP, and as a result, build equity, long-term equity for the company. And so I would think a lot of agency leaders will want, and the scenario you shared with me, want to start building these capabilities and investing in building these capabilities. And sometimes it's not just building something brand new. Sometimes it's building a plug-in to something that already exists. We're talking about nobody's going to, I doubt any agency is going to build a new ChatGPT, platform.
No.
None of them have
building a large language model is probably a bad idea, I would say.
Yeah. I mean, they don't have the resources, they don't have the means, they don't have the billions of dollars that those tech companies are investing to build the next generation of AI technology. But they can build, interfaces that are leveraging, that very powerful set of data and enable new scenarios. And we see that across the board. I see just, again, very creative ways of doing that. So IP, talent and IP are probably the two ways by which I think we can create value for an agency today.
And just turning our thoughts for a second to, before we go to our final question, but turning our thoughts to the client. So looking at things through our client's eyes, through the brand's eyes, obviously they'll be in positions whereby they want more for less. The CFOs are putting pressure on budgets, moving from retainers to projects. Smaller value at risk, I would say, is on the agenda. So if you're, again, on the brand side and you looked across the entire industry and you were a big brand and you spent, 20, 50, 100 million a year on various advertising services or various marketing services, what would be on your mind in terms of selecting agencies now? What would you be most concerned about, most interested in when you're selecting new agencies?
That's also a very interesting question because we work with very massive brands today now, multi-billion-dollar companies which invest hundreds of millions of dollars in marketing. And to your point, as they look at their agency model and their agency roster, they're always looking for a certain set of skill set, capabilities, and criteria along the way. And knowing that they are trying to, and they are really required to some degree, so I have a lot of sympathy for them and compassion for them. They are dealing with a lot of pressure from budget pressure, and expectations are never been greater, I guess, on the marketing advertising side. They have to look for partners that can deliver sustained value, and that sustained value can be expressed in a lot of different ways. Number one is they are looking for partners who have the ability to, again, be agile and flexible, because they oftentimes may not be able in a position where they can commit to these large, very fat retainers, and they may have to be a little bit more lean that way and maybe engage agencies on a project relationship basis, maybe test them out and looking at ways to run these programs more efficiently. So they're looking for agile, flexible partners. I think they're also looking for agencies that are clued in and really become advocate on the agency's brand and look for ways to drive cost down or execute the work cost efficiently. And what I like about it is no longer on the receiving end of the agency the brand putting a lot of pressure on the agency fees or the financials, but you become really a strategic partner thinking, how can I best support my client looking for ways to do things more efficiently than I am now? So we both win, I guess. So the client can do technically more with me on a long run. So I think they're looking for business savvy agencies that can put themselves in the shoes of the client, look for efficiencies, but also can execute again in very cost-effective ways.
Definitely. And if I look at some of the agencies I've worked with only in the last just 12 months, and I've been involved in quite a lot of the negotiations with those brands as an advisor, or as a lead in some cases. And what I'm seeing is absolutely that Brands don't want to work, in my view. Brands aren't trying to kill agency profit margins.
That's right.
That's completely, and they know that's completely counterintuitive. That's a race to the bottom. It drives quality out of the industry, and that does no one any good. But what they do want is, and I've seen a few instances where they're quite happy to spend the same amount, but they want more for what they're spending. So agencies can maintain the same budget lines, but they've got to drive efficiency internally and in collaboration with their client in order to get more value out of that spend. I think agencies that get their head around that and proactively start to go to their clients, we can be more efficient. That might have an impact on quality or on elements of risk or timescales, but that there's a trade to be had and there's experiments to be run. I think brands are open to, well, yeah, sure, okay, we'll run some experiments. If that works, then let's scale the experiment up, make you more efficient, and then give you the same spend to generate more value. Are you seeing similar things?
Yeah, I think that's well put. I think the brands are sensitive to how agencies will support their goals to run things more efficiently. And to your point, if they are sacrificing talent by just putting junior resources where the work requires more senior talent, that's going to create an issue.
Because they're forced because of reduced fees. That's a bad model.
That's a bad model. If so there are some things that agencies should be careful when they try to meet those expectations to make sure they're not shooting themselves in the foot. But there are ways of reorganizing the work, reorganizing the teams, using technology again, all of that to really accelerate or streamline or shrink the amount of time and resources required to get work done. I give you an example. Years ago, I was meeting with an agency, and they were sharing a practice they put in place with a client. One of the concept was they come up with ideas. They were coming with ideas on a regular basis, and what the client will do is will take the idea and then start providing feedback, and then more of the idea and evolving the idea, and then it ended up taking a lot of resources to take an idea that was maybe decent and trying to make it great. And then what they decided with the client to do instead would be that it's basically ended up being a yes or no type of things. He allowed the agency to produce more ideas, but the only option for the client to either take the idea as it was or not do anything with it. And it was like a go, no go decision rather than go, yes, but with these kind of modifications. But it allows them to get a lot more ideas from the agency. And then when they like the idea, to execute on that very effectively rather than, death by, paper cuts, by trying to morph an idea. So I'm just a simple example of how you can really change the way you work with your agency and drive efficiency that way in a very collaborative manner.
So we're at 27 minutes. Where did the time go? So just to kind of round off the questions, is there anything that you've seen in your research? I know that you work with the ANA and other organizations. Anything in your recent research in the last quarter that you think would be interesting for listeners out there?
Yeah, there's a lot of work that the ANA is doing, to I would say improve and extend some of the capabilities and best practices that the industry has developed over time. They're doing oftentimes in partnership with the Forests, which I love. I think one of the things that we should be paying attention to has been really around these concept of catalyst for growth, the concept that the industry is really trying to organize itself behind a number of best practices around growth, which means responsible growth. So that involves a number of topics. So how do we continuously build an ecosystem that's going to be healthy and robust? So there's a lot of work being done on understanding building transparency in the way how the ecosystem works. There've been, as you know, a lot done on media. There's doing more on media transparency and programmatic. I think that work will continue. There's an appetite for transparency. I think there's an appetite for just more responsible practices across the board. So that's anywhere from diversity and inclusion to, the concerns around greenwashing and, the environment and just a number of very interesting pieces of regulations as well that are governing how brands can do the work they do and trying to lead by example. So I think there's a lot of work they're doing there and researching that. And then lastly, I think it's all the work that again we've talked around technology and AI. I think there's a lot of the Forest has issued quite a bit of resources there on generative AI and some of the tools. The ANA is also interesting doing that. I think there's a sensitivities around how to use AI responsibly as well for content creation, making sure we drive accountability, transparency with users. So I think there's going to be a lot of work being done that I think trying to preclude any regulation by being proactive and self-regulated, if you will. And I hope that we see more progress there before the government steps in and start limiting all use of technology in certain aspects.
Because on the whole, regulation from governments as a kind of as a heavy hand is normally a bad way to change and transform an industry, because people will find smart ways of getting around the regulation, and that's not helpful again to anyone at all.
And then the other reason for that, just to add to your comment, is also not because we're talking about this global nature of what we're doing here. There's so much competition, technology-wise, right now at the global macro level that anytime you introduce regulation within the EU or the US market, you are potentially slowing down innovation compared to other markets, global markets. So it is a sensitive topic because we can't look at it only within the context of the market in which we operate. This is a global issue altogether.
And I think the EU recently have they introduced or are introducing regulations around AI.
They are, and they're doing in small increments. I think we're going to see more and more. I think the US is also through the FTC and also looking at and doing similar things. But there's even at the state level. I think I saw recently California was going to introduce a bill. They eventually stepped away from it. I think there's again sensitivity around.
They did. They recently just walked back from the regulation, didn't they?
Yeah. So just for those concerns, again, they're afraid that talent is going to move out of state. Companies are not going to be able to compete successfully. So it's very interesting. I think that's one thing I would pay attention. You asked the question originally. What should the agencies pay attention to? I think that's looking at what's happening here and try to again be ahead of the curve and think strategically and proactively about things you can do to be a responsible party here. Is something we should all do.
And just a kind of final word, if you were talking to indie agencies around the world that were in that kind of 50 maybe to 250 person agency, what would be your parting thought for them?
I think I would say that if you look at the way the marketplace is evolving, there is again probably for the first time in a long time an appetite for truly transformative ways of working. I think the brands are looking for new ways of collaboration, new ways of producing work. There's just an appetite, I think, that makes it kind of a tipping point really for the industry to explore new ways of doing things. And it's going to create, I think, a lot of new opportunities for agencies, new ways of working, new business models, maybe new ways of serving clients, new capabilities they can offer. I think we've never been at a more just pivotal point in our industry where I think so much innovation and so much so many new concepts will emerge in months to come, and I think it's gonna be a more exciting time to be in our industry.
I would agree, and I think if you look at a lot of agencies talk about partnering with their clients. Some of it's partnering, but quite a lot of it is being a supplier into your brand in some ways. There's never been a better time to partner in a very meaningful way, which is to innovate and to share ideas and to experiment and to co-invest and try things out, because we don't know what the future is going to hold in the next 12, 18 months. And brands don't know, and they want help and they want guidance.
They do. And I think I think one of the questions in the industry right now is, always been, the agencies have been, again, that catalyst point to bring a lot of ideas to clients. I think a lot of clients now are also, very active in trying to anticipate what's next. And so it's more of a balanced perspective or viewpoint. It's no longer just the agency leading and innovating. It's really a wonderful partnership where the client and agency can sit at a table together and really think about what's next. And so it's again, very exciting time for our industry overall and for the agency world, because I think there's going to be really a range of new possibilities for them to explore, and that's going to create, I think, a lot of very interesting concept and ideas for us to explore.
Bruno, it's been brilliant. Thank you. And you've been it's refreshingly upbeat, because there's quite a lot of doom and gloom around at the moment about fee income's down and the market's tough. But actually, there's a very bright future for this industry, which is refreshing.
Yeah, we say, necessity is the mother of innovation. I think that, I think we always see agencies really, as they face challenges, come up with new creative ways of doing what they do. And so that's why I'm so excited and enthusiastic about the future, is because I've seen so many of them do so well. And I think we'll keep seeing, the best and the brightest come to on the top.
I would agree. Bruno, it's been amazing. Thank you ever so much indeed. Where can people find out more about you?
AgencyMania.com is a good place. Agency Manias, the book is also a great place to learn more about these best practices I just mentioned. It's second edition now, and it's really been positioned and received as a guidepost for not only brands but agencies as well. So maybe it's a good resource for your listeners.
Definitely. And also, your quarterly newsletter is fantastic.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Yeah, I publish these industry updates on a regular basis, looking at what agency reviews are taking place, who's winning business, who's losing business, M&A, holding company, financial results, and then anything in between around AI, as we mentioned, and talent and the work and all that good stuff, awards as well. So it's a very comprehensive view of the industry, and it's, thank you. Appreciate you saying something about it, Mike. So glad you like it.
Anyone listening should absolutely subscribe. It's a brilliant, brilliant piece of research, really informative. So thank you for that.
Appreciate it. Thank you, Mike, for the opportunity to be here today.
Bruno, it's been amazing. Thank you. Thanks for listening to Higgle, the B2B Sales Club podcast series with your host, Mike Lander. Please subscribe so that you'll catch all the next episodes.